Are we good? Okay, we're good. Go for it.
Awesome. Three, two, one. How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spirit Talk. And finally, what seems like maybe 6 months trying to get Deron McBee on the show, we finally have him here. You guys may recognize Deron as the iconic Malibu from American Gladiators, Motaro, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and a slew of action movies where growing up, whether it's T-Force, Cage 2, The Killing Zone, a bunch of my favorite action movies growing up. And again, Darren, it's great to have you on here today.
Thrilled to be here finally, John.
And yeah, so it's growing up as a kid. I'm big into VHS, and so when the blockbusters and stuff when they were going around, my friends and I in high school would always find like these really dollar store VHS places in the transition to DVD and all that stuff, and we just went down this rabbit hole where it's like everything from Hellraiser to anything you can find for a nickel or whatever is 10 for $1. And one of the trends I noticed is a lot of the movies. You were always the movies, whether it is Cage 2, The Killing Zone, T-Force, and some of these roles where it's kind of, and it's just really surreal for me because when I started this podcast, there are a list of people I wanted to have on there. There's like 25 people. You were one of the names because, again, growing up, you always either played the hero or this really cool henchman. And it's for me to have you on here right now. It's actually really, really cool.
Oh man, thank you very much, man. And you know, it's funny you mentioned those roles. It's like I would have people tell me, like, "Hey, man, I saw you on TV last night, but yeah, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning after I came home partying all night, and there you were." And I go, "Yeah, that's usually when my movies end up on television."
And I kind of want to jump into it before we actually talk about certain roles. One of the cool things for people that have the chance to follow you on social media, namely Facebook, you are very inspirational. You motivate others. And I guess kind of my first question is how long did it take to become that person? Was there a specific hardship in your life that made you become this person? Is there trial and error in your life? Because if someone that's not familiar with you just stumbles on your page, you'd be like, man, this guy is like really maybe it's the faith, maybe it's whatever it is, but you're very positive. I think that's something in the last couple of years that people really need to feel that positivity.
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question. You know, it's funny that a lot of people don't realize that when I was a young kid in high school, I was about 120 pounds soaking wet at about 5'6", and I didn't really start to grow until I was a senior in high school. So I got bullied in school. I was very insecure, but I always had a great athletic ability, and I had faith that I was going to make something out of myself. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I just always seemed to believe that I could do better than I was doing in high school. And of course, I think the most important thing for me was my faith in Jesus Christ. I became a Christian when I was 13 years old, and it was a really important time in my life because my parents had gotten a very brutal divorce, and I was a very young man, and so I really felt like I was abandoned by my father growing up. And so my faith in Christ really filled a terribly huge void in my heart that was broken. And so at that point, I think I just always wanted to strive to achieve the best Deron, to be the best Deron I could possibly be in whatever endeavor I took.
One of the people who follow this podcast know I'm very with my faith. I'm Catholic. I grew up Catholic. All this stuff. And I try not to make this podcast religious because I've had guests on here atheists. I've had Hindu, whatever belief. I don't care. Be a good person. And I'm glad you touched upon that because so many people get lost in this idea of, well, I don't believe in God or I don't believe in this. But for me, it's like, take all that out. Just like politics, take it all out. What is the nitty-gritty of a really good person? And again, you kind of help people. The people that post on your stuff, when you post a meme or a positive message, people they needed that for the day. And it's that you don't need a religion to be that good of a person. And it's really cool, again, to see you really proud of who you are.
Well, thank you. I mean, it is a core person. I mean, the core value of who I really am, and it's not affected. It's not a put on. It's just who I really am, and it's really important to me, especially now when you look at today's world. It's just so beaten up and so battered, and especially the last 9 months of what's been going on with our country. That people are down, they're hurting, and they're crying out, and they're looking for hope. and they're looking for help. And that's one of the reasons why I love being here at Hope Recovery Center, because Sean, the owner, is truly one of the most spiritual, godly people I've ever met. And he solely runs this place, and not only does podcasts, but he reaches out and helps anybody that's struggling from depression, pain, suffering, addiction, whatever. They're all welcome here to come in and get healing, get hope, and get love. And so to me, that's what my life is all about.
It's so easy to be mean or to be a bad person. It takes a lot of work, I think, to be that good person. I think people are afraid to put in the time to be that, but just holding the door for someone, or just saying God bless you when they sneeze, or it's this day and age where it's be a nice person. Just be a generally good person.
Yep. And it's funny, we did a podcast with a friend of mine named Rick Bassman, who's a really super sharp guy. He was a motivational speaker. He also was a concert promoter. He was an agent for me for a while. But Rick and I did a show called Be Good. And it was just all about what you're talking about. It's just, no matter what you do, no matter who you are, no matter what you believe, just be good. How about just be nice? And you're right. You don't see that a lot today. And you look at the things that go on in Facebook, some of the horrible things that people will say to each other. It's painful and hurtful. And you're right. It's so easy to be negative. It really, really is. But it takes some work to be focused, pull yourself out of the gutter, pull yourself, I'm talking about myself, waking up on a tough day and saying, listen, I'm having a rough day today, but if I can make somebody else happy or be a blessing in somebody's life, then I feel so much better about who I am.
Right. And for those people that aren't familiar with the story, your dad walked out on your mom and yourself, and your childhood was traumatic. And I know people today that've gone with the parents whose kids have gone through divorces or traumatic instances, death, and stuff like that. And sometimes it's tough for me to kind of see people struggle and not come out of those trenches. And they're not necessarily digging their own trenches, but they get kind of laid down in this dirt pile. They don't know how to get out. And what advice do you have for those people that have gone through something you have, or maybe something even worse or less than, but the people that are reaching out for help, like how do you kind of motivate them to keep reaching out for help?
Right. And I'm glad you asked that question, because it's a really good question. It's true. I grew up in a family that seemed to be like the perfect Beaver Cleaver family. My dad would kiss me goodnight every night. He told me he loved me. And I remember when I was 10 years old, my dad's best friends got a divorce. And I asked my dad, would you ever do that to my mom? And he promised me he would never leave my mom. Well, 6 months later, my father, who was like God to me, said, I'm leaving your mom. And it was like my whole life was blown apart. And unfortunately, from that devastation, my mom became an alcoholic. My sister became very promiscuous. My brother was a huge party animal, and he still struggles today off and on. And my sister ended up, unfortunately, drinking herself to death at 42 years old. Just horrible things had happened. So when I looked at that, you're right. I could have easily gone into a downhill slide. I could have easily, just said, well, life, sucks and I'm going to give up and screw the world and all that. But, I really believe that the faith inside of me and God inside of me helped me look at the situation and say, I don't want to be a part of the problem. Okay, I want to be a part of the solution. I want to be somebody out there that will lift people up and encourage people. And I've gone through some hellacious stuff. 7 years after my sweet wife died from a surgery, elective surgery, which was horrible. I had to go to the hospital and identify the body, and there she was, looking like she was sleeping. It was horrible. And then 2 years later, I found my mom dead on the floor from a massive heart attack. So, I tell this because a lot of people will look at me and go, oh, this guy's had a perfect life. He works out. He's in these movies. Life is beautiful. That's just not true. I mean, I've been through, hell and back in a lot of ways. And I look at these situations, and I honestly, my prayer is, okay, Lord, just help me utilize this tragedy to touch somebody and motivate them and help them, because they're going through tough stuff. Because let's face it, these things happen to everybody. Death happens, divorce happens, loss of life happens. And so I really honestly believe this all my heart. I believe that God has allowed me to go through these things so that I can use it as a springboard to be a blessing and encourage other people, because they'll just look at me and go, wow, I had no idea you went through that stuff. thank you so much. And all of a sudden they're a lot more encouraged because it's not coming from somebody who's had everything and had a silver spoon in his mouth his whole life, but has been through these trials, tragedies, and tribulations and come out, I think pretty successful and with a positive attitude.
One of the or two of the so that I don't take a lot of stock in the whole celebrity lifestyle, even though I do security for a lot of them and bands and stuff. But one of the coolest things is the idea, like when Chadwick Boseman, the actor, or the latest Norm Macdonald died recently. They hid their cancer from everyone, and the idea of dying with grace, but they lived there each day to the fullest and did what they loved, and it's for me. And I try not to look at stuff as bad days because I've got a sick father or I can't see my girlfriend or stuff that's trivial and seem major to me. There's a kid who's 12 dying of cancer in Dana-Farber right now. And so there's people and so you're kind of just like, man, how do I – so the mornings when I wake up, I'm just like, man, I need to conquer this day, but I feel like trash. I have to kind of just take a deep breath and go, man, my life isn't that bad.
Right.
Sure, I've had people die in my life or divorces and stuff, but you know what? I need to push forward. And so for you, when you have those bad days, do you have to kind of step back or like what's your process to kind of move forward for that day?
Well, another great question. Honestly, what I'll do is when I'm having a really, really rough day is I will literally sit down and pray and I will thank God for the blessings I have in my life. And I'll actually, I've gone down and my children are having a bad day. Something happened at school because someone took their milk money or something, and I'll say, listen, can you go to the sink and turn water on? Can you make it hot and cold? Can you flush a toilet? And they're going, yeah, Daddy. I said, then we are more successful than the greatest majority of people living in this world right now. And I will look at these things that seem trivial, but they're not, because we are so blessed to be in this country. And we're so blessed to have these things that people take for granted. Just living, for instance, when I've traveled, I've seen people living on dirt floors with no restroom and be 10 people on a one-room dirt floor as a family. And here we are, we've got carpets, we got beds, we got showers, we have all these things. And unfortunately, people just take those little things, which to me aren't little, for granted all the time. So I just try and tell people, I try and take them back and say, look, count your blessings. And also that's a really big thing that's helpful is go find somebody else to help. There's somebody out there hurting. I don't care who it is. It's like you said, go open a door for somebody. And when they say thank you, you're going to feel better. And that's how I believe life works. I mean, when you pass it on or pay it forward, whatever you want to call, be a blessing to somebody, you get the blessing right back every single time. At least I know I do.
I've noticed the last 6 months or so when I want to do something different every day, whether I'm interacting with someone at a register or a store or wherever it is, ask them how their day is going. And so today, actually, of all places, I'm at the post office. I've seen this woman a million times, takes the mail. And today, I was like, how's your day going, ma'am? And she kind of looked at me going, man, she goes, it's going great. Like, thanks for asking, how's your day going? And we know each other. And she's just like, you know what? This whole week, no one ever asked me how my day is going. They just, I want this, I want this, I want this, give. And she goes, it was really refreshing. I wish more people did that. And I was like, it got me thinking, how hard is it to say hello to someone? Exactly. Ask them how they're doing.
Exactly. And I applaud you for that because so few people do it. And I think the more we do it, the more blessed we are and the more we help other people. And we can get ourselves out of those deep, dark slumps that we can tend to fall into. So I applaud you for that, brother. That's awesome.
And so as we you're going through, you're doing sports, all this stuff. At what point did the fitness kick really kick in that you were like, man, I could make something of myself here?
Yeah. Wow. That's funny. I remember watching the movie Rocky when I was 17 years old or 16. And come on, it was a classic underdog story. And that was me. I'm looking at that guy going, okay, that makes sense to me. I've been beat up. I'm a loser in everybody else's eyes, but I can go do something. And that something for me was to start working out at the gym every single day. And then I started playing this really cool sport in the late 70s and 80s called racquetball, which is a huge, huge sport back then. And I became one of the top 10 players in the world at the time. And I started building this cool body. And before you know it, it was like, man, I'm doing really, really well. And from there, I decided, well, what can I do with my career, which I really want to do? And I became an LA County sheriff, which was a wonderful experience for me. I was in the police Olympics and the World Police and Fire Olympics. I got gold medals in both in my sport. And it was awesome. It was just really, really awesome.
The law enforcement stuff is super fascinating to me because I never would have pictured you in that role. But hearing you talk and just how you present yourself, I could see why you'd be effective in that role. And I was in law enforcement for 8 years.
Cool.
I know a bunch of friends who are still in it.
Yeah.
And one of the things for me is I could not go through what they went through, these men and women, the last couple of years with the whole defunding and stuff. And I'm very pro law enforcement for obvious reasons. But like for you as a cop doing all that stuff in LA County, the idea of the serving the community, the idea of customer service and stuff, I think people get lost in this thing where the police aren't bad people. Like they're paid to operate in a gray area that a lot of people can't even operate in the white or black area. And for you to have kind of just a taste of that, it says a lot about your character because there's not a lot of people that willingly just want to sign up for that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I thank you for saying that. I was very altruistic when I got on. I thought, I was going to change the world, but when I really realized what was going on out there, and saw the darkness of what was happening, I realized, okay, this is taking more out of me than I'm able to put back into it, and that's the reason why I finally just kind of turned my badge in and said I didn't like who I was becoming. And I agree with you. Most all the police officers I've ever worked with were super great guys. They're under a lot of pressure a lot of times. But unfortunately, there are a couple of, just like any job, just bad people. But the problem is if you're got a gun strapped to your waist and you're a bad person, then we got problems. And I'm hoping, and I know now that the departments are really trying to ferret out the bad people a lot more and doing more psychological examinations and things, but that's going to happen. And sadly, we get this terrible reputation because of a few of these bad guys. And that's heartbreaking.
As you turn in your badge, and so the interesting for me is the growing up, obviously, American Gladiators is just monumental. I still watch the outtakes. I still watch the outtake or the actual clip of you. That's how I actually found out about you when I first YouTube. I'm like, my friends and I'm like, man, this Malibu guy is insane. Like, just is this a real person? And so before I kind of talk into the character, how did the tryouts for that? How does that come about? Is this one of those things where the open casting call is every good-looking man, woman who's a fitness freak, looks the part? Like, that must have been insane, the tryouts for this.
Well, it's funny you asked that because I remember I was sitting on a life cycle writing, and this guy next to me was reading a trade paper. I think it was Variety. And he says, Deron, check this out. And I go, what? And he says, well, they've got this show called American Gladiators, and they're looking for what you just said. They're looking for fit people, and they need one guy that's kind of a surfer guy and, blonde hair. And my hair was long and blonde. And I'm thinking, man, I got to give that a try because I've been training. And my body was finally looking good. And I was athletic from all the racquetball I played. So I went out to a park down in West Hollywood. No, it was, I think it was Bel Air. Anyways, we had an obstacle course, and then they had you do how many sit-ups you can do in a minute and pull-ups and things like that. And I crushed it. I went through and just absolutely crushed it. And they loved my look. So they had me on a interview with all the producers at one point. And I think what got it for me was they told me to stand up against the desk, and there was like 10 guys around staring me down, and the desk was full of paper and cups and all this garbage. And I just went up to the paper and I just cleared it off with my hand and jumped up and sat on it. And I go, what's up, dude? It's like that. And they fell out laughing. They just totally fell out laughing. And so that's kind of how like the Malibu persona was born. Now, the interesting thing was, they were going to originally call me Domino, like Domino's Pizza. And I looked at it, I go, no, dude, my name is Malibu. Come on. And they just, again, fell out laughing. I go, Domino? Who's Domino? I'm not a pizza delivery dude. And so I'm just making them howl laughing. So that's how the whole Malibu name came about.
What, in terms of the actual, was there ever a point where you kind of got blurred between Deron and Malibu, or is there almost like was it a healthy yin yang between yourself and this character?
Well, there's a lot of me in Malibu for sure. He was an over the top version of me, and I had a sister. I love her. God bless her. She was like one of those Valley girls, like the
Oh,
quintessential.
okay.
Oh my God, totally all that stuff. And so I lived with her, and I thought, man, I'm just going to rip off that whole Valley girl and character and utilize it. And so really, that was the smiling and all that. That's who I was. Where all the other guys were being tough and gritty and trying to tear everybody's heads off. I'm thinking, no, I'm going to be the laid back guy who just has a great time no matter what. And I think it completely resonated with the American people. They were looking at it going, man, that guy's cool. We like that guy. He gets his butt kicked. He's happy. He wins. He's happy. It's all cool with this guy.
Well, he was just super positive. I think growing up, for me, like there's certain characters like yourself or Hulk Hogan or He-Man, or at least these out-of-world characters for me as a child. I'm just like, yeah, they're just really positive people that if they lose, they lose, but when they win, they win. It was really cool.
Yeah.
So when you do the taping, obviously the first season, but then you kind of just go back, leave, and come back and start doing like the touring.
Right.
What was the biggest difference for the touring? Like, what's the setup for that? You guys in a big bus roll to the city, do the press promo, and then perform that night, or how'd that kind of work?
Yeah, it was really interesting. We started off in Maine, and I remember they got us all in a room, and then somebody who was really savvy on helping people work in front of the microphones, how to answer questions. We went through a whole 8-hour class with, how do you answer things and how do you talk to them. So I learned a lot. It was really fascinating. And then it's like you said, they put us on this rock and roll bus, literally one of those old time rock and roll buses, and it smelled like beer and cigarettes to the max. And we got inside and we started going from place to place to place. Well, a funny story, 2.5 weeks into our trip, the commode broke inside the rock and roll van. Okay. Now you can imagine girls, guys doing their business, and where it broke over everybody's luggage. So the luggage was destroyed. It was like you open that compartment, I was like, whoa, it was like really bad. So, everybody had to get their stuff out and buy new stuff. And I'm thinking, well, welcome to the road finally, But then we traveled on and went to different places like Hershey, Pennsylvania, and then Madison Square Garden, which was absolutely awesome to be there.
When did you realize that the American Gladiators would become this iconic brand? Like, at what point were you kind of like, was it the reruns, or was the idea that ESPN wants you for a documentary or whatever, it is? Like, what was that moment you're like, man, I was part of something that's going to last the dawn of time?
Yeah. 2 times, two real times it really kind of got me thinking this is amazing. First was about a month and a half after the show just started. I went to a TGI Fridays with my girlfriend, and I'm watching people go crazy. They're watching on the monitors at TGI Friday, and I'm going, man, what are they cheering for and losing their minds? I look up, and there I am doing Powerball and stuff like that. So I go, wow, this is a big deal, And then the second time was actually when I went to Madison Square Garden. I was on the floor of the garden looking up with a sea of like 20,000 screaming people that were there just to see us. And I thought, this is massive. I mean, if you can sell out the garden, that's a big deal. So right then and there, I realized that I was part of something very special. And like you said, very iconic.
It was just kind of cool. It still is, because it promotes fitness. It promotes people going against good versus evil in a sense. And it's a very cool, it's just a great concept. I just remember the Powerball or the gauntlet at the end where you launch the tennis balls and stuff. It's just like, as a kid, how cool would it be to just shoot that gun at one of these competitors? It's just really cool you're a part of that.
No, yeah, thank you very much. And it was fun doing the games too. I had a ball during the game. So yeah, it was great being a part of it.
And for me, when it kind of hit home, I know we were supposed to record a couple months ago, but when Thunder passed away, and then before that, I remember, and I read the book, and Dan Clark, Nitro. And so when the men and women of these things, for me as a child, as I get older, they have health issues and they pass away. It kind of hits home, and it's like, not only these people, you don't realize how much these people are in your life,
Right.
whether it's for 30 minutes every week or it's so. When I just went back a couple weeks ago, I reread about the Thunder stuff, and it's like you don't realize it's like these people had an impact on your life, and more of the times than not, it was a positive impact. And so to see someone suffer, it is, and your reaction to the news, like it was just so genuine. Like this is one of your brothers that obviously went through. Yeah, it's sad.
It was tough because I went and was performing with we did kind of a live dinner theater in Kissimmee, Florida, and Shelley Beatty was there, and she was Siren, and she was deaf, but unfortunately she committed suicide and going through just a terrible depression. And what a neat gal, silently suffering, and but such a great competitor and a beautiful person. So that was super tough. And then, when I found out that Dan had a heart attack, that was heartbreaking, because he and I kind of did the show together. And so, we were good buddies during the show. And then again, Billy Smith, I mean, he was larger than life. He was thunder. I mean, that guy was massive. It was shocking because when I first heard about he was sick is when the ESPN crew said, we want to do the documentary, we want to interview you. And they were interviewing me, and I said, hey, how's Billy doing? How's Thunder? Because I'd heard they went to his house first, and they said, he's not doing good. And what do you mean? They said, he looks terrible. And I'm shocked. My jaw's hanging down. I go, what do you mean he's terrible? And he goes, yeah, he was kind of on a walker and thin. And so they said he's just really not doing well. And so I was devastated, of course. I was never super close with him, but I sure respected that guy like nobody's business. And I'm still not sure what the final cause was for passing.
But there's not a lot of men and women who were American Gladiators to be part of that brand. And so how often, and obviously you still have your friends, and I don't care about any of the drama or all that stuff, but in terms of when someone passes like that, do you kind of all like reach out to somebody, hey man, how you doing? How are you doing? Like stuff like that, because the community is so small.
Yes. I mean, it was heartbreaking too when Lee passed away. Hawk, I worked with him.
Oh yeah, jeez.
And I mean, talk about a guy who was super talented. Not only was he an amazing athlete, a good-looking guy, but he was brilliant. I mean, he had one of the sharpest minds of anybody I've ever met in my life. So I'm looking at this guy going, man, the sky's the limit ahead of this guy, what he's got in his future and all that stuff. And such a neat personality, very positive. So another shocker, to hear that happened to him, unfortunately.
One of the people, again, who follow this podcast know I love Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I've had Margine Holden on the program, Keith Cook, and I'm a huge supporter of J.J. Perry, Ray Park, everyone associated with that movie. Yeah. And again, one of the reasons why I want to have you on here, because I've always loved Centaurs. And you play this larger-than-life Motaro. So how did that kind of, again, was that one of those casting types where hey, we need a big muscular guy, that's agile, athletic, would look the part? Like, how does that kind of get put out there? Because were you familiar with the franchise when they put the audition stuff out?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was always a fan of Mortal Kombat. I thought that was just a wicked, cool-looking game. And I had heard one thing about this Motaro character, that he was like the unbeatable tough guy of the game. Like, if you get past Motaro, I mean, that's a big deal. And that's kind of all I knew about it. But, yeah, I got a interview. Went down, did my interview, and they liked my look. They were it was more like a physical checkout to see if you were the right size and stuff. And then the next one was a martial arts interview to see how well I moved and, could fight and things like that. I mean, I went through 5 different interviews for this. And originally I think they hired a guy that was pretty much bigger than I was, but he didn't have the acting chops, because the character needed to be able to be a decent actor. So I was blessed with this part, man. And I had so much fun. I had a great time working with Red, who played Saber. And we had a ball, great time together. And of course the epic fight we had is he played Jax and I played Motaro. So we just had a ball together.
And I think over time that movie's become that cult status, where people like, man, just really appreciate the audacity, the filmmakers and crew, and the cast had so much fun making this movie. Yeah. And one of the things when Margine or Keith were talking about it, they were just saying, I asked them, I go, what was craft services like? Like, when you guys are all backstage, you have world championship martial artists. You have you have these guys, action icons, just
Right.
walking around in character and costume. Like, how do you kind of just like step back and be like, I got to up my game. If my fight scenes today, all these people could be watching me. Like, how do you kind of, does that motivate you when you do a movie like that, when you know there are world champions or martial artists over here or weapons experts over here? They're like, man, I just see what this guy brings today.
Yeah, I mean, I got to admit, most every one of those people could outclass me any day of the week in martial arts. So, I mean, I always look at them just so in awe of what their talent was, and just watching them perform. And of course, it upped my game. I mean, it just made me want to be that much sharper, punch that much harder, and look that much more crisp. I think the one thing that I had in my advantage was for my size, I know to throw really, really good punches, and I control my body. So I look a lot more flashy than I really am in real life. But yeah, it was amazing. It was just incredible. JJ Perry, I work with him at Conan. So, I mean, he's an amazing guy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a really cool guy. So a lot of those people just looked up to them guys big time.
Now, in terms of your martial arts, I know you trained with the Billy Blank's gym.
Right.
Another good friend of the podcast, Anthony DeLongis, the weapons
Yes.
prop master. And so when you work with people like that, like I mean, Anthony's one of the best of the best, maybe the best in terms of weapons and stuff. And when you work with someone like that, how incredible is it for you to be like, this man took his time to train you? And like, I just can't wrap my head around it. It's like you have the opportunity as an actor to, if you really want to take this role seriously, you can work with some of the best people to get you ready for that role. And you had that chance, obviously, with Anthony. It's just super rad.
Yeah, you know, when I first met Anthony again at Conan, he actually was the second choreographer I worked with. Before him was J.R. Beardsley, who was a dear friend of mine and an awesome choreographer. But Tony, I mean, Anthony, with his whips and his swords, I mean, he's absolutely like a sword master, a great actor, a great athlete, a phenomenal person. So, you know, I felt super blessed to be able to be trained by him. I'm just, you know, a lot of times you just want to pinch yourself, you know, it's like, what am I doing here with these amazing people? You know, and thanking God every second. But yeah, it's like, I want to shine for these people. I want to, you know, look better, make Anthony proud of me, you know, that kind of stuff.
One of the last movies I actually rented on VHS was The Cutter. And obviously, growing up, I got to watch Chuck Norris, right? And so, but as I get older, I started to research. I started putting people together. I'm like, oh, you play the Alex the Repairman, I believe. And I was just kind of like, as I'm older now, I'm like, I wish that fight scene was longer. Like, you have a chance to go against Chuck. Like, in terms of the filming of fight scenes like that, use that one for example, because it is Chuck Norris. How fun is it to? I mean, obviously go one-on-one with him, but even put together a fight scene. Like, part of me thinks that fight scene could have been a lot better.
Yeah. I think because of time constraints, and I totally agree with you, that it could have been a lot better. I had my first, you know, time that I worked with him was, of course, with Walker, Texas Ranger, when I did an episode on there. And I agree. I kind of felt like that should have been the Godzilla King Kong fight, you know, in the movie. And, you know, I don't have much of a say so, unfortunately, but yeah, it went quick and fast, and we had two small little fight scenes, and then we were done. So I love watching him work. I love watching him fight. His stunt double is absolutely insanely talented. I mean, like him. So, I mean, it was like great fighting with him. I was looking forward to it. Yeah. And that's happened a couple of times. So it's a little bit disappointing, just because I wanted to have more for my reel. But again, I was so thankful for the opportunity, that I wasn't going to complain. That's for sure.
Well, you look at something like Cage 2 and Lou Ferrigno and Red Brown and all that, and you're kind of like, both those movies, Cage 1 and 2, Matthias Hughes is one of the other ones, or it's all these legit people like yourself that kind of went through these movies where it's like these kind of fighting tournament movies. It was just really cool, again, where, man, I wish there was 5 minutes longer to this fight.
Yeah.
Because clearly you bring something to the roles you're in, because you're just a believable, very overbearing. You are a presence. And again, another time where I'm like, I wish you did more with this role, or you could have done more with this role.
Sure. You know, and again, it's one of those things where I feel the same way. But then again, a situation with Lou, first of all, looking at Lou, I was just absolutely, I don't know what to tell you. I was I'll tell you this. I took a picture. My daughter was about, I don't know, maybe 18 months, and I'm yoked at 245 pounds. And I took a picture next to Lou, who's 315 pounds. And when I saw myself, I thought I was a stick man. I mean, literally, I lost 100 pounds all of a sudden. I look like, you know what I mean? He's just so massive. And such a neat guy, but he's limited with what he can do fight wise. And so we have to kind of work around what his abilities, dictate. And so that's why things kind of happened the way they did. That's the best answer I can give you.
Right. And so I'm glad you brought that up because in terms of you can look good, you can look muscular, but if you don't have the fitness or the dexterity to kind of pull us off, and so you maintain like through your career, you're obviously still in the gym. You're obviously still about fitness and eating clean and eating healthy and all this stuff. And so when you're filming and stuff, how important is structure in terms of I still have to go to the gym before I film today, or I still have to do this before I pick the kids up? Like in terms of structure about your health, where does that kind of set in your daily day-to-day activities?
Well, it's so top of the game, really, because I mean, really a lot about what I do is how I look. And so if I'm not training consistently as much as possible on the set, you're going to see a different Deron 6 weeks later than you are in the beginning. And so I want to be looking as good as I can, eating as healthy and clean as I can, to stay consistent. So I would, if I had to train, work 16 hours like I would on, say, on the Batman movies, I would end up going to the gym at 10 o'clock at night, exhausted, and then working out, because I was just that focused on wanting to look and be as effective and powerful as I could be on camera.
Now you mentioned kind of the funniness, the hilarity of Malibu, what you brought to the character. But when you do a guest spot on, say, Curb Your Enthusiasm, which was so funny, like that seemed like the most genuine. That was more like you. Like it looked effortless how you'd react to someone like Larry David doing what he did. And so when you get to do a show like that, how cool is it that here you are and you're one of the top shows ever, and you get called you're Thor.
Yeah, you know what? That honestly is probably a piece of acting I'm most proud of anything, because it's unscripted, and so everything that you're doing is just off the cuff. And I looked at it like, okay, since my character supposedly had 3 little kids in the car, I've seen parents when they're really, really angry and they want to use a 4-letter word, but they'll go, well, poopy pants, or they'll say something like that just to get a word out. And so I thought, well, how do I just tell them off and not cuss them out with using 4-letter words? Because that's how they had written. They said, we want you to tell me F you and this and that. And I thought, you know what? That's passe. Everybody does that. Let's do something different.
Right.
And so literally at that point, I cracked him up 3 different times where we had to cut and restart filming. And the first assistant director came up to me and said, Deron, you don't understand what just happened. I go, what happened? He said, no one's ever made him laugh on the set, ever. And they said, this is a first, and you've done it 3 times. So I felt really good about my performance that day, that I cracked up. Very good.
And what's funny, what makes that scene so funny is that when you look at you now, you look like the type of person where if you got rear-ended or something happened, you're going to go right to 11 and you're going to start knocking people out, swearing, cussing. And the fact you didn't made your character that much funnier and more like truly a great scene.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm, like I said, I'm super proud of that. And it won some awards, and I still get residual checks from it. But I'm really proud of that piece and very thankful for the opportunity to be able to do it.
Now, in terms of other arts, are big into painting too, and so does that type of art give you the same kind of mental and physical release that, say, maybe filming a TV show or movie would be, or is it something? It's a different type of release for you?
Yeah, it's totally different. I mean, it's a different mindset, a different zone that I'm in. It's a very peaceful place. It's like I tune everything out. Whereas when I'm doing a martial arts scene or an acting scene, I have to be focused on not only myself, but the people around me, reacting to them, reacting to what's going on, looking out for safety and things like that. But what's interesting about the art thing is I can just totally get into my painting, get into my art, and I really get lost in it. So 2 different types of things, but very gratifying.
Right. And it's for me, it's the people that can work out in the gym. But you also need to do that mental workout. It's cool that you have painting where some people could like the hiking
Right.
or the writing and stuff. So I always find it really cool that people are able to do the equilibrium of what they
Yes.
to kind of get that full mind to body workout. I think
Yeah.
that is super important today.
Yeah, no, that's a good word. I totally resonate with what you're saying. I totally agree. And I also think, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it's really important that people do more things for themselves like that. To find, I hate to say that happy place because that sounds cheesy, but they find that place in themselves where they can have more peace, whether it's writing, whether it's gardening, whether it's riding a bike, talking to a friend. Well, it doesn't matter, but you find that place where you can just zen out, and chill out and just let your mind be free and be creative.
Well, I think it's vital that people every day before when they wake up try and find the best version of themselves. And so whether it is the arts or working or just be a good person, like we talked about,
Yeah.
again, it's so easy to do that
Yeah.
people just don't do it.
Right.
It's frustrating.
Right. 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 Right.
It, in terms, so I know you mentioned the ministry people can kind of they need help or they need to get away or whatever kind of structure is. How does someone kind of reach out to your ministry? Like, what's the protocol for someone that's in the area? Or hey, Deron or Kyle, whoever, I need help. Like, how do they go about reaching out to you guys?
Sure. Sure. Sean, are you still there? I'm going to get a hold of Sean because Sean, I want you to give out Hope Recovery Center number and information. Okay. Um,
Sure, I would be glad to.
Go ahead.
It's 951-694-2942. Or you go to our website, which is Hope Recovery Center Inc.org.
Right on. So,
Love
you
it.
know, if no matter what kind of needs you have, you can contact Sean. Me personally, I'm a certified drug and alcohol counselor. Right now, I'm actually managing a sober living house. We got 9 guys in there, and that's a busy job for me, but it's very gratifying. If anybody's hurting, you're dealing with depression or addiction issues or any of that, you can contact me personally. My cell phone number is 818-612-4304. That's 818-612-4304. Deron McBee, you just call or text me directly and I'll do whatever I can. If you need placement in a sober living house or you need help getting into a rehab center or you just want to rap, man, you want to get together and talk. I find that the most effective. I love helping people. I love counseling people. So I will be at your disposal.
I'm kind of blown away. Not that you're so open and out there about that, but here you talked about at the start of this interview your hardships, the death, the divorce, all this stuff. You carry the weight of this through your life, whether it's law enforcement, acting, gladiators, whatever it is. And here you are, that carrying your weight, but willing to take on the weight of others. I think there's not enough people in this world today that are willing to kind of sacrifice maybe some of the sanity you have, or man, I can spend more time with my kids or family
Right.
or me time. But here you are, man, I gotta get this person in the house. I'm gonna be late for the interview, John. I gotta help this person. That is the coolest thing to hear. That you're always thinking about other people first, and it
Right.
really is rewarding just to watch you do that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, and it's rewarding for me too. Believe me, there's a selfishness about it, in a sense, but it's just super gratifying, and knowing that I can be there for somebody that says, I was literally thinking about killing myself, and or going drinking a bottle of booze until something bad happened, and then said you changed my attitude, and even if it's just for a day, I'm so thankful I can be there for people and help people. So yeah, it's very gratifying, very thankful to do it.
So before I let you go, obviously, people reach out to your social media, or they can actually call you now. But any projects or anything in the works here coming up, where people can anticipate stuff kind of coming out as we kind of wake up from this 2-year slumber.
Sure. Definitely. There's an ESPN documentary coming up. I don't know the title for it, but it's about the American Gladiators. It's kind of a retrospective. It's going to be a 30 for 30, which is one of their big
Awesome.
big deal previews. So I'm going to get a lot of footage on that. I mean, I was super blessed. Those guys followed me around everywhere, and we had a great time. And they are just a class act. Those people over at Vice TV are wonderful people, and I can't say enough. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to give a shout out to my new bride, Alicia McBee. We got married in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, on September 28th, and actually filmed by ESPN, which will be on the documentary. So I love you, honey, and I know you're gonna be checking this out. And so I'm really thankful that you had me on today, my friend.
That's awesome. And, congrats on the wedding. That is super awesome.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Deron, for everything. Talk to you later, brother.
All right. God bless you, John. Take care, man. All right, bro.
Awesome. Dude, that was the best.